Okay, Councillor Glancy and members, yes, we are now live streaming on YouTube, and I make it just 3 minutes to go until the start of the meeting.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our remote planning meeting. First of all, a little bit of general housekeeping. I am Councillor Margaret Glancy, Chair of the Planning Committee. And prior to this evening's meeting, we have been testing the technology, and I can confirm that the speakers are in attendance and can be heard. I can also confirm that I can see and or hear my fellow participating members here this evening. Those members are Councillor Bindloss, Councillor Brown, Councillor Chandler, Councillor Faulkner, Councillor Glancy, myself, Councillor Hewson, Councillor Higgins, Councillor Holmes, Councillor Posnett, Councillor Steadman and Councillor Wood. And I would be grateful if each member could raise their hand to let me know that they can hear me, if you could do that. Thank you very much, councillors. Thank you. And we have a team of officers present this evening. We have Solicitor to the Council, Mr. Bob Power, our Assistant Director for Strategic Growth and Regulatory Services, Mr. Jim Worley, our Development Manager, Louise Parker, a Planning Officer, Sarah Legg, and members of our Democratic Services team, Natasha Taylor and Sarah Evans. And I'm losing my voice already. Right. Members speaking. I'd be grateful if members could please use the raise hand facility on your screen, and a member of the Democratic Services team will make a note and inform me accordingly. Members voting, Please note a remote member participating in a vote will cast his or her vote as if participating in a recorded vote. I will ask members alphabetically for their vote, either for, against, or abstain. All microphones will be unmuted whilst the vote is being recorded. Following the vote, all microphones will be returned to mute. Disruption to remote conferencing. I refer you to the remote meeting procedure rules. In the event of a link failure for all attendees, I will call a short adjournment of up to 5 minutes. If the link cannot be re-established, the meeting shall be adjourned to a later date. In the event of a link failure to individual members, the remote member will be deemed to have left the meeting at the point of failure. And if the link cannot be re-established before the end of the meeting, then the presumption will be that the meeting should continue to deal with the items, providing the meeting remains quorate. If there is disruption in a member's connectivity, Solicitor to the Council, Mr. Bob Power, will determine whether a member has heard enough of the debate to be able to lawfully vote, depending on the particular circumstances and how much the member has missed. Just to remind everybody, the meeting is being recorded, and remember, it is being live streamed. Please put your phones onto silent. Item 1 on the agenda, apologies for absence. I have no apologies. I can see you all here this evening. Item 2, to confirm the minutes of the 25th of August and the 3rd of September. I'm looking for a proposer and a seconder for these minutes. If you could raise your hand accordingly, please. Councillor Posnett and Councillor Steadman. So Councillor Posnett, you were first. I presume you're going to propose?
Yes, I'd like to propose the minutes, Councillor Delancey.
Thank you very much. And we take both sets together rather than doing it individually.
Yeah, that's right.
Thank you. And Councillor Steadman?
I'd like to second that proposal, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'll just make a note of that. And the next one is, rather than go through my list of councillors for agreement, I will assume every member agrees the minutes unless you raise your hand to indicate otherwise. Okay, so thank you very much, councillors. Declaration of interest. Please note the content of the advice on members' interests, and if you think you have a personal, either non-pecuniary or pecuniary interest or bias, please state that now. Councillor Steadman?
Yes, just I will be standing down on the first application to represent the village.
Okay, as ward councillor. Yeah, okay, thank you. Councillor Posnett, you've moved. You keep moving around my list. Councillor Posnett.
Not biased, just a personal interest as a member of Leicestershire County Council.
Okay, that's brilliant. Thank you very much. Bear with me for a moment. We have 2 applications on the agenda this evening. The first item is 4.1, which is application 19/01302 full, land west of Main Street, Stavern. You may recall this is one that we deferred earlier. It's for the demolition of agricultural building and the erection of 74 dwellings, together with access into the site from Main Street and open space, landscaping and drainage infrastructure. Officers.
Nancy.
Hello.
Just before you move on, I just wanted to confirm that I have moved Councillor Steadman through to attendee, so she is now an observer of the meeting.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. This one falls to me this evening. Before you put the images up, please, Louise, there's some bits and bobs we need to catch up with, as is customary. So literally just the updates. So firstly, only one further objection on this occasion that isn't included in the report. So to briefly run through its content, despite the amendments, the Plot 8 bungalow is still very close to the boundary of the Walnut Close properties. I'll illustrate that in a moment. The development is still considered by the commentator to be too suburban and too dense, containing 74 properties as opposed to 65 referenced in the local plan. An absence of maintenance for the Rundle Beck, and a conclusion that presentation to the committee is premature because there are still matters requiring resolution. In terms of consultations, a clean bill of health really. The LLFA have come back on the amended plans, confirming they retain their position of no objection and simply reiterate the conditions that they previously listed, and those are they that form Appendix A, or part of Appendix A this evening anyway. And likewise the Local Highways Authority, although with the, I think, helpful comment that they consider the impact on the wider road network would not be severe, and relate that directly to the test in the MPPF. I'm just drawing that out because you'll remember a number of our representations have spoken about traffic impacts distant from the site in the village centre and further afield, but the Highways Authority are happy with that. And lastly, in terms of updates, Councillor Evans has advised he can't be with us tonight. He's not addressing the committee, but he asked me to pass on his thoughts. Firstly, he would request a condition requiring solar cell installation capability. I don't think he's meaning solar panels on the roofs, just the ability to add them later. And likewise, electric car charging points capability. And secondly, he fully supports the Parish Council's view on the footbridge, given its contribution to sustainability through connectivity. You'll hear of that later, and I know you were all approached last night about that. If we can have the images now, Louise, please. I shall race through them as best I can. As the chair said, we dealt with this, would you believe it, was 6 weeks ago. It was hot where I was, and now it's freezing. So I shall just home in on the differences, basically. So if we can flip past that slide, just dwell on this back one, please. Just dwell on that briefly. I haven't done a sort of before and after here because of the size of the plan, but you'll see here, if you remember, greater dispersal, particularly at the west, left and end of the site of the affordable houses. They were occupying a single row before and wrapping around the corner, and now you can see they're spread a bit more widely. Moving on. Yeah, this is plot 8 that I referenced. So 2 changes here. The what we dealt with in September is on the left. You can see a pair of semi-detached bungalows there, close to the boundary. Thanks. And the direct comparison now is a single bungalow, a little further from the boundary. So just to highlight that difference. I think we all know that tree doesn't exist, by the way, having all been there. And if you can, and that is said bungalow. And the reason I've shown that is just to demonstrate that it is a bona fide bungalow. I think it's 5.5 metres high, so not one of these stretched definitions by any means. And you'll remember from the report last time, this land sits half a metre or so lower than the immediate neighbours. Thanks, Louise. The top left-hand corner of the site, that would be northwest. You can see here the difference. There was concern about the row of 3 houses in the centre of the left-hand screen. They were maisonettes and therefore had elevated living space, and they've been substituted to conventional houses in more or less the same location on the right to alleviate that particular, or to try to alleviate that particular concern. And I think there's one more difference I just needed to draw out, which is this is an example rather than the whole picture, because it's been applied throughout the site. Landscaping has been introduced to these parking areas to try and break up the sort of sea of car parking reservation that have been expressed to us. And you can see an example there of the ones that's centre north of the site. Moving on, I don't need to comment on that slide. That's the same as last time. That's just the public car parking. So partly detail and partly update. There's an update on the section 106 for the play equipment, you will have in your report a request from the Recreation Association for off-site play equipment, but the developers had already proposed on-site play equipment, and this is an illustration of that equipment. But we're aware latterly that the applicants are quite happy to pay in full that off-site contribution if it alleviates them from providing on-site. But that is something that needs your judgment and authority, basically, if it's an option we wish to take. In legalistic terms, I don't see a problem, meets SIL requirements and things, so you do have that discretion. And finally, I think, yes, finally, this debate about the footpath link into Valebrook Close. This is quite simply a map showing, well, A, where the footpath link is towards the west of the site. Obviously, it's exaggerated in scale, so you can actually see it. And simply a map of the core facilities. So you can see make a comparison of the two routes that people might take. So if it was there, up through the north running part of Valebrook Close and then right towards the village centre, reaching the garage and the pub first amongst the facilities. And if it wasn't there, forced to go through the length of the site and exiting at its access near the primary school and accessing those facilities there. And just like the play equipment, the same rules apply. These things can only be included if they're considered necessary, as well as related to development, which I don't think there's doubt of in this case, and necessary is a judgment. I'm just giving you facts here on which to base that judgment. And I think that is the conclusion of the update. It is. Thank you, Louise.
Thank you for that. Members, do you have any questions before we hear the speakers? No, can't see any hands raised. Right, this evening we have three speakers. The first one is Mr. Kenneth Bray from the Parish Council. If you could bring Mr. Bray forward, please.
Just bringing Mr. Bray in now.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Bray.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Everybody?
I think by now you would know the routine. It's 3 minutes.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. I'm
Yes,
sure
well
Mr.
practiced.
Power or someone will
Well
be
practiced.
time with you.
Okay. So, yes. Good evening, everybody. And first of all, I'm going to say some thank yous. First to the committee yourselves for making the decision to refer this back for more work. Second to Councillor Steadman for an immense amount of work that she's done on this. To Davidsons for their prompt, energetic and professional response to the challenge you set them. And to be fair to Mr. Worley, who's done a fair amount of work as well. We now believe this to be a much better proposal and well worth all those efforts. It takes into account many of our concerns on layout, as Mr. Worley just described, and is now a good example of what can be achieved. It will, however, still be a big challenge for our small village to integrate this development, and we still have work to do on developing the details. First, talk about the link bridge that Mr. Worley was talking about. The statement in the report was incorrect, and I wrote to you yesterday with our reasons, and I'll repeat some here. We firmly believe that it does fall within CIL regulations. Is it necessary in planning terms? We believe it's essential requirement of planning considerations to aid connectivity as far as is practicable. This bridge, far from being peripheral to the site, would actually prevent the site becoming peripheral to the village. For the majority of the dwellings on this site, the walk to the village centre, pub, village hall, shop and garage is considerably shorter via the link, up to 35% shorter, over 175 metres, thus reducing the temptation to get the car out. Secondary school children, it reduces the walk to the bus pickup point for Bottisford. And similarly, regular bus pickup points are also quicker to access from that direction. Pedestrian access at that point would also allow for joggers, dog walkers and others from the estate to take a more circular route or to access different parts of the countryside. We feel it's essential to provide connectivity for the neighbours to allow children to play together, dog walkers to walk together, adults to socialise, etc. And finally, safety. We believe that people will cross this anyway. In the summer, when the stream is dry, adventurous children and road dog walkers already do that. A properly constructed bridge is a safer option. You can make this happen, please do so. Then on conditions, traffic calming is described as contentious. We are not contending it. Although there are concerns, we believe they can be addressed adequately through the condition 13 as it stands. We don't, on the other hand, want to wait for the 50th house to sell. It's rather late. We believe the construction management plan can take care of the development phases in terms of road safety. And finally, for this and other conditions which ask for plans to be approved by the local planning authority, we wish for the parish council to be involved in the development of those plans.
30 seconds, Chair.
That would be landscaping, biodiversity, construction management, surface water, construction, environmental plan. We understand you can instruct your officers to include us in that circle, and please do. We believe it would assist the process a great deal. We are trying to help, not hinder in that offer. So, thank you. That's me done.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Do we have any questions of the speaker members? I can see Councillor Chandler has a hand raised.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm supportive of the bridge, but I'm raising questions about the costs now come down, projected costs now come down from 20,000 to 10,000. Now, we have a bridge in Musson, where I live, across the river. For years and years and years, well, I'm told 2 or 3 centuries, it was planks welded together and no handrail, and the kids loved it because they used to push each other in the river. This, I think, is dry, as Mr. Bray has said, in the summer, but for £10,000, are you going to be able to construct a bridge that will conform with health and safety regulations, Mr. Bray?
We do have a firm quote for that bridge, yes, with handrails for that price from a local contractor. It's quite a short span, although it can be deep. It can be deep, but it is quite a short span.
Thank you.
Thank you. I can't see any other hands raised. Just scroll down. No more hands raised. Okay, well, thank you very much, Mr. Bray. Thank you. Our second, I'll give you time to, thank you. Right, our second speaker is Mr. Guy Longley, who's the agent.
I'm just bringing Mr. Longley through now.
Thank you. Hello, Mr. Longley. Sorry, excuse me, I was just making some notes.
That's okay.
You know the routine by now. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. Following the deferral of the application at the 3rd September committee, Davidson's Developments has worked closely with local ward members, the parish council and local residents with particular concerns to revise the master plan proposals for the site. The revisions have resulted in a better scheme, which deals with the outstanding matters raised at the previous committee. Your officer report and presentation deals with the main changes to the proposals, in particular amendments to address resident concerns on Walnut Close and Velbrook Road, redistribution of affordable housing units, and dealing with concerns about tandem parking. We would particularly like to thank Councillor Mel Steadman and Ken Bray for their time in working through the amendments with us. In terms of the Section 106 contributions, Davidson's fully recognised the need for contributions to improve local services and facilities, and is happy to make appropriate contributions where the council is satisfied that they meet the SIL regulations. We had suggested the provision of a trim trail for use by both adults and children on site, but we understand that the parish council would prefer a contribution towards existing off-site facilities at Statham Recreation Ground. We're confident that the revised proposals will provide a high quality development that is in accordance with the relevant policies of the local plan. Davidsons are happy to continue the positive dialogue with ward members and the parish in the discharge of conditions, and also throughout the construction phase. We would therefore urge members to approve the application subject to conditions and a Section 106 agreement in accordance with the officer recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Longley. Do we have any questions of Mr. Longley, members? No. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
And now finally, we have the ward councillor, Councillor Melanie Steadman. You're on mute. Thank you.
Can you see me?
Thank you. Brilliant.
I'm not used to giving speeches like this, I can tell you.
Oh, I'm sure you'll cope.
Shall I begin?
Yeah. Right, Councillor Steadman, you do know the routine as well as I do. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Councillors, Chair. Firstly, thank you for giving us all the opportunity to put the finishing touches to this application and the time to address the problem areas. I handed Mr. Longley a list of compromises on the morning of our last committee meeting. Both Mr. Longley and Mrs. Prangley set about the list with some gusto, bringing forward other ideas of their own into the mix as additional improvements, which was much appreciated. They have managed to achieve everything we asked for with sprinkly bits on top. What is beyond our control, however, is the contribution for the footbridge, linking this site with the wider village, its community and amenities to which it will belong. Also, that it is the 106 for the play park equipment in the village in lieu of equipment on this site, which Davidsons are willing to pay. That is within the gift of this committee, and I ask you to consider this. It would be the icing on the cake. I would like to personally thank Southern Parish Council, who have taken on board that this is an allocated site and adopted an approach to get the very best from it for their current and future residents. I applaud this attitude and their particular consideration for the amenity of their new residents. Mr. Longley and Mrs. Prangley for really taking on board our list of compromises, going beyond them with their own ideas and bringing a personal and compassionate touch to certain aspects that we have had to tackle. Thank you. Jim, well, forever patient at our ever-changing requests and last-minute seat of pants adjustments, and Mr. Evans for his support and faith in us. Thank you. Can I just add, if I've got some time, when this application first came forward, we threw down the gauntlet to Davidsons and asked them to show us how they could adapt a site to a rural location. And I think we've done really well with this. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, Councillor Steadman. Do we have any questions of Councillor Steadman, members? I can't see any. Do you have anything there, Natasha?
No, there's no hands raised, Councillor Glancy.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much. We'll move you back now while we go through things. Thank you. Mr. Worley, would you like to offer further comments on what you've heard this evening from the speakers?
No, I don't think there's anything further for me to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, members, over to you. Do you have any questions of Mr. Worley before we start the debate? Can't see any hands raised. No,
there's no hands raised.
Right. Over to you, members. Who would like to be first? Councillor Higgins.
Well, thank you. And I think I've been on the planning committee for about 5 years as a substitute and then as a full member. And I've also spoken at planning committees before I was a councillor as well, and watched and heard it. I don't think I've heard 3 speakers like that. And there's some members on here who've got more experience of planning committees than I have. So to have the ward councillor, the community and the applicant all singing off the same hymn sheet, I have to say, I think this is nothing short of fantastic to hear. I think it shows an excellent example of everybody working together. I know behind the scenes there was some fraught negotiations, and in any negotiation that's a healthy part of debate, each side challenging each other. But I think they've all come together here, and I think their willingness now just to permit the accept the officer recommendation. And I think from the ward council and the community, they've shown real leadership here, and the positive engagement, I think, is a beacon to all other communities that we serve in the Melton Borough of what can be achieved. And I think it's great, some of the funding that's coming through, which is, it's not just the minimums as well. How many times do we hear it's always the minimums that the applicant or the developer puts forward? They're going way and above the minimums here, and I think that's a sign of a community-minded developer that Davidsons are. I agree on the footbridge. I can certainly see, as Mr. Bray put, I can certainly see the benefits there. So I think that's very much needed. I'm not going to propose the recommendation, but I'm going to certainly be voting for it if somebody else wants to propose it. But I think it's just a fabulous story here. And just my last point, I think a lot of villages and community groups in the town as well, with them coming together on these kind of developments, they're having so much more of a say and getting so much more out of it. I mean, the money the village hall's getting here, the money that the recreation ground's getting, well, just fabulous. Well done to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Do we have any more contributions to the debate, members? No. Well, here we go. Councillor Faulkner, I can see your hand is raised.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, when you look at this application today from where we were just a few weeks ago, when it was a touch and go whether we were actually going to defer it to look for changes or possibly refuse it, to get to a situation where we're now, it looks like we're going to be recommending acceptance of this, is quite remarkable. I've never seen such work. It's very, very good. So I will go a stage further than Councillor Higgins, and I am quite happy to propose that we accept this in line with officer recommendations.
Right, well, in that case, I saw Councillor Holmes, you have your hand raised. Are you willing to second?
Yeah, that's what I'm going to do, and I'm not going to do the talking. I think it speaks for itself. I would like to second this application.
Thank you. We have Mr. Worley has your hand raised. It's going to be about conditions, isn't it? I was just going to mention it.
No.
But...
Nope, it's going to be about the detail of 106. So, as per recommendation, it's kind of, as I reported when I was speaking, it's moved on from the recommendation. Yeah. So we need your direction on the money for the off-site play equipment as opposed to on-site and on the bridge.
Yes. Sorry about that. Yes. I'm quite happy to have the contribution for the off-site equipment rather than the on-site. And yes, I do believe the bridge is required.
Are you happy to agree that, Councillor Holmes?
Yeah, I am. Yes, I am. That's fine.
Brilliant. So thank you very much. Do we have any other contributions to the debate? No. I think I will just say that this just illustrates how, well, or what we can achieve when we have the dialogue, to be honest. And it is a tribute to those that took part in that dialogue, officers, the developers and members. So well done, everybody. It's far superior to what it was originally. So now, still have two hands raised, Councillor Faulkner and Councillor Holmes. Have you?
Oh no, sorry. I thought it was down. Sorry, I thought it was down. Sorry, Madam Chairman.
Right. So we have a proposal to permit, together with the additional off-site play equipment contribution and the contribution for the footbridge, linking the site further into the community. I'll just go through the councillors' names, and if you could indicate whether you're for, against, or if you wish to abstain, to abstain. The first one is Councillor Bindloss.
For.
Thank you very much. Councillor Brown.
For.
Councillor Chandler.
For.
Councillor Faulkner.
For.
Councillor Glancy, I'm for. Councillor Hewson? You're on mute, Councillor Hewson.
Yeah.
You just put your hand. Okay, you agree. Thank you. We'll take that as read. Councillor Higgins?
Four.
Thank you. Councillor Holmes?
Four.
Thank you. Councillor Posnett?
4.
Thank you. Councillor, no, Steadman's not here. Councillor Wood?
4.
Thank you very much. That's unanimous. Unanimous to permit. So thank you very much and well done, everybody. Thank you. Right. We'll now move on to the second application before us this evening, which is 19/00245 Reserve Matters, land field OS 0002, Leicester Road, Melton Mowbray. And I believe it's Sarah Legg who will be addressing the committee this evening on this one. Over to you, Sarah.
Thank you, Councillor Glancy. Members will recall that this application was first presented to the committee back in November of 2019. Members resolved at that committee for the decision to be deferred for additional design workshops to be undertaken to enable parties to work positively and proactively to secure some better design, sustainability and climate change objectives. Specifically, the original requests related to a scheme that functions well and adds to the overall quality of the area, a visually attractive development with good architecture, layout and effective landscaping, a development sympathetic to the local character and history surrounding built environment and landscape, a development that establishes a strong sense of place using streets, spaces and building types to create attractive, welcoming and distinctive places to live and visit, and to produce a sustainable development that recognises the implications arising from the effects of climate change. So members will recall that an amended plan known as Revision Y was submitted and presented at the meeting of the committee on the 27th of February this year. At that meeting, members again resolved to defer the application to allow for additional communications to address some existing concerns around parking arrangements, to mitigate as far as possible the need for on-street parking, to reduce the density of the built form and introduce more greenery and a feeling of spaciousness to blend in the affordable housing so it feels more part of the development. So myself, Mr. Worley and the developers met back in March, just prior to the lockdown. So these issues were discussed at length with the developer at that point, but obviously the delay has happened due to the COVID-19 lockdown and the developer was delayed in revising those plans. So that's what we've now got in front of us, those revisions, which is AB1. Which is for determination this evening with a recommendation to approve. So helpfully, the applicant has provided a plan showing where and when the amendments have been made. That's the revision AB1 on the screen there in front of you, and I've referred to that in my report. In addition, the total amount of dwellings on the site has been reduced further. So it started at 249 dwellings last year. It was then reduced down to 236 and we're now at 233. And that consists of 198 market dwellings and 35 affordables. So the next few slides, I'll zoom in and highlight those amendments to you so you can see where they are. So thanks, Louise. So this slide shows that plot 43 has been amended from tandem to frontage parking, and plots 44, 45, 46, 47 and 54 have been changed to integral house types, which removes the tandem parking down the side of the property. So please note that for 3 of these 5 plots, the internal garages are still required to provide the parking that's necessary for those properties in terms of the highway standards. They're 4-bedroom homes, so they require 3 parking spaces. The next slide, please, Louise. So this one shows there's been a parking space added to the front of plot 96, which removes the triple tandem parking. In addition, the 3rd parking spaces have been removed from plot 60 and 61 to remove the triple tandem parking, and plot 229 has been changed to side parking and 228 to include an internal garage. And the same goes for that plot, as I said previously. Next slide, please, Louise. So here you can see that plot 213 has been changed to include an internal garage to remove the triple tandem parking, and visitor spaces have been added to the front of plots 210 and 211. So that's just shown pretty much in the centre of the screen at the moment. The third parking spaces have also been removed from plots 221 and 222 to remove the triple tandem parking as well. Next slide, please. Moving a bit further down the site, plots 105 to 109 have been replanned to design out the parking courtyard, which caused some concerns and creates a small amount of open space which members were keen to see introduced into the site. So that will allow for non-motorised users to enjoy some space away from the carriageway. Plots 186 to 190 have been replanned to incorporate some open space, and plot 191's parking has been adjusted to remove the triple tandem parking also. Next slide, please. And here you can see that some visitor parking has also been added to the front of plots 183 and 184, and 124 to 131 have been redesigned to remove the parking court as well and creates a mixture of frontage and side parking. The next slide, please. So at the front of the site, so the southern extent, facing onto Kirby Lane, the managed lanes on either side of the entrance have now had some visitor parking added also, specifically in front of plots 4 and 5. That's on the left-hand side of the screen, and then plots 163 and 166 over on the right-hand side as well. And the next slide, please. And the final amendment, so we've moved over on towards the west-hand side of the site now, is to plot 157, which has been changed to a house type with an integrated garage, again to remove the triple tandem parking there that was proposed. So next slide, please, Louise. So what I've done here, but it's acknowledged that obviously a number of plots have had their parking arrangements altered, and in some cases those house types have been amended to remove the triple tandem parking, which was down the side of the plots. But there does, however, remain a significant amount of that across the site, particularly where garages are providing parking spaces that are required to satisfy the Highway Authority. So as you're aware, 4-bedroom homes, they require 3 parking spaces. Here I've taken a snapshot of one part of the site, which is plots 180 to 188, which is on the eastern part of the site overlooking Kirby Fields. Apologies, I've had to rotate it by 90 degrees so that it fits onto the slide. But each of those proposed homes along there has 4 bedrooms and therefore require 3 parking spaces as a minimum. So in each case, apart from in the case of plot 185, which is just to the centre of the right there, which has an integrated garage, and the garage is behind tandem parking spaces. So it's technically still kind of tandem parking, just to bring that to your attention. But it is obviously important to highlight that the Highway Authority hasn't objected. The development meets the requirements of the parking as per the highway design standards, and they've also provided some visitor parking. And in this particular case on this edge lane, obviously it's not on the main street, so if there were to be some parking in the highway, it's not going to cause a huge obstruction. But across the site there's around 46 plots which have this type of parking arrangement, just to bring that to your attention. So the next slide, please, Louise. So probably the most significant layout change in this revision, as I referred to briefly in one of the previous slides, is that some green space has been added in the centre of the site. I've zoomed in here towards that, and you can see some open spaces being added in to give some non-motorised user connectivity, in part along the main spine road and then towards the Kirby Fields Park to the east. It's obviously a welcome introduction, but it's been raised with the developer that this could have gone a little further towards enhancing the layout, and they could provide more linkages and connectivity into the Kirby Fields Park, further to the south or further to the north, where you've seen on the very first slide that they'd put some arrows in to show where you can get that connectivity, but we talked at previous committees about enhancing that ability to see that connectivity is there. So the developers advised, however, that they consider that the amendments made in the latest revision suitably address the concerns that you raised at the previous committee, so wished for this to be reported to this planning committee. So overall, it's considered that a proposal builds on that which was deferred by the committee back in February, but whilst it could go further in terms of the layout and the design, the proposal is revised as revised, is considered to present a form of development that would be acceptable by virtue of its appearance, landscaping, layout and scale, and wouldn't unduly compromise residential amenity or be prejudicial to highway safety. For those reasons, the proposal is considered to comply with the relevant paragraphs of the NPPF, the National Design Guide and Policy D1 of the Melton Local Plan as outlined in the committee report. It's just one other thing to note is the conditions as recommended by the Highway Authority, which are actually in their consultation response, were challenged by the developer, and those which appear in the report, which are numbered 5 to 8 at Appendix C, are those which have been agreed with both the developer and the Highway Authority. The changes relate to the wording of those to ensure that the conditions meet the tests and to ensure that they are precise. One condition that was requested by the Highway Authority, which does not appear in the appendix, has been challenged as being ultra vires. I agree that it is indeed the case. It related to drainage. It's outside of the scope of the application. It goes to the heart of the development and should have been applied at outline stage, but it wasn't. As such, that condition doesn't appear in Appendix C. Over to you, Councillor Clancy.
Thank you very much. Thank you for taking all that in. Do we have any questions of Sarah before we call in the speakers? Councillor Brown.
Thank you. Just a couple of questions, Sarah. First one, in relation to housing mix, how does the site conform to the adopted policy C2 table 8, please? Could you just explain that to me?
Yeah, basically it wasn't conditioned in terms of any housing mix on the outline, so there is no requirement for this development to follow that policy. It has a reasonable mix. It is top heavy on the 4-bedroom properties, but we don't have that within the outline for us to be able to request a specific housing mix, unfortunately.
Okay, sorry, I wasn't here at the outline. Second question is 35 affordables. What's the makeup of those affordables?
That's outlined in the Section 106 agreement, again on the outline.
Just remind me of that, please.
I'm just going to have to go and get that back out again, Councillor Brown. Can I come back to you on that?
Yeah, of course you can. Yeah, no problems.
Of course you can. Next one is Councillor Manjit. Let's just answer the question on the affordables first, Sarah.
Sorry,
Yeah,
I might just be a couple of minutes, so I just need to dig out the Section 106 agreement. I haven't got that open up on my screen.
Okay. We have another
Well, can I just
from
say, Madam
Councillor
Chairman,
Holmes.
can I just say how I think Sarah does an excellent job. She's nice, she's polite, and it's not just that. She seems to go into every detail and knows exactly what she's talking about, and gives out as lay people an insight into how she comes to her conclusions. I hope she can hear me.
I can, thank you. I'm just still taking time to find this Section 106 agreement.
Okay, thank you.
The other thing that I wanted to mention was the drainage, because that is worrying to the extreme.
Yeah. Does Mr. Worley have the affordable housing mix to hand at all?
Not to hand, but I can go digging. So it's maybe better if I do that while Sarah joins you.
Yeah, I was just
Apologies, I've remembered this one isn't in the Section 106. It's actually on the decision notice. It's one of the conditions on the decision. If you can find that, Jim, that'd be really helpful. Thank you.
Would you like to answer Councillor Holmes' question about drainage? Did you want to ask the question again, please, Councillor Holmes?
Yeah, I do. I understand that it wasn't put in at the beginning, but you know, it is where it is, and anybody can see that there's going to be problems with. I know there's supposed to be a balancing pond. There's also, but to me, it's a soggy old area, and my goodness, there could be some water coming down there. And I just don't know quite how it's going to be safe. Let's put it like that.
Just for to clear up any confusion, it was a highways condition relating to drainage that is the Ultra-Far-East one, so that's why that hasn't been included. The lead local flood authority has been consulted and doesn't have any objections to the proposal. The drainage was assessed at the outline. Essentially, the drainage strategy is that which was part of one of the issues to do with the landscaping and the layout when the application came to you back last November. If you recall that they're lifting the front of the site up at Kirby Lane to allow for it to drain towards where the balancing pond and the sustainable drainage is at the north of the site. So that's how the drainage is worked out. I don't know if it's helpful to bring up that first slide again, Louise, if you've got it.
It might be a good idea, because I still think we could have an awful lot of water going down to the other places, you know, that have been built on the other side of the Leicester Road.
Yeah, they do sort out their own drainage. They've got their own sustainable urban drainage, which is to the north of it.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, right. Let's just have a right.
So if you can see along, so Kirby Lane down in the south of the site, they're altering the land levels there essentially to lift that bottom corner, so that southwest site would be lifted, which allows the site then to drain to the north towards that attenuation basin that's in the north. The Bellway site, which you're referring to, which is the other half of that site, would obviously drain down the hill towards Leicester Road further to the north, and that's got its own sustainable urban drainage there. And again, the lead local flood authority didn't have any objections to that.
Good. Good. Righto, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Do you have the answer, Mr. Worley?
Still searching, I'm afraid. There's such a long and complicated history on this site. There's many places to go. I'll keep going.
Okay. Are you okay, Councillor Brown, if we continue and then the question can be answered later?
Yeah, as long as we get an answer before the end of the meeting.
Okay, that's fine. Councillor Holmes, did you have anything else to add?
No, let me put put it down. I'm sorry I haven't. There we are. Yeah.
I dare say by the time we get to referring back to officers to respond to the speakers, we'll have the answer by then, I would hope, at some point. Okay, thank you. Before we have one speaker this evening, and that is Mr. Robert Gully, who is on behalf of Barrett's David Wilson. So we'd like to bring Mr. Gully forward. Thank you. I can see you, but you're on mute. Right.
Okay.
You're not now. Right. Yes, 3 minutes.
Good evening. Thank you, Chair. Robert Galley, Planning Director, Barratt Homes. Chair, this is the third time our reserved matters are being formally considered by the Planning Committee since the original submission to the Borough Council on the 26th of February 2019, and the second time we have officer support for a revised scheme before members. The recommendation for approval this evening is welcomed. The very latest planning layout, revision AB1, addresses the 4 specific matters raised by members on the 27th of February this year, as referenced and itemised in the report. In addition, the latest revision incorporates previous changes made and matters arising following the earlier formal consideration of our then reserved matters on the 28th of November 2019. As such, the scheme before members this evening should be considered in cumulative terms, embracing all amendments and revisions to date. An appropriate planning balance has now been struck in our view as applicant, reflecting all relevant material considerations. This very latest iteration is worthy of presentation to and endorsement by the Planning Committee. Barratt Homes is looking for a conclusion this evening with a definitive outcome and favourable decision, enabling us to proceed with confidence towards site acquisition, scheme implementation and delivery of much needed new housing, both affordable 35 units and market 198 units in Melton Mowbray. Economic and social material considerations have become more important since the 27th of February, given the current COVID-19 pandemic, with the need for greater economic stimulus and social investment in major housing provision. Please help us deliver this imperative locally by approving this very latest revision, which your officers conclude is acceptable. Revision AB1 reflects local plan policies, the NPPF, associated PPG, the NDG, and the Design and Access Statement approved by members historically under the outline planning permission. No objections are recorded or outstanding from statutory consultees and stakeholders, including the local highway authority, as we've heard, to revision AB1. The draft conditions contained in Appendix C are all agreed between your officers and ourselves and meet the tests contained in the NPPF and associated PPG. In conclusion, Chair, I commend the very latest comprehensive submission before members this evening and urge the recommendation for approval to be endorsed, thereby enabling the decision notice to be issued and our ability as prospective site purchaser and proposed developer to move forward accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions of Mr. Gully? Nope. No. Okay. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move you back now to the attendees. Thank you. You have anything else you'd wish to add at all, Sarah?
Apologies, just having some
No, don't
problems
worry.
unmuting there. I was putting my hand up to say something. Yeah, we've found the guide, the bit about the affordable housing. It's not in
Okay.
section 106. It was done as a condition back in the 2015 outline.
Mhm.
So that condition requires no development to take place until a scheme for the provisional of affordable housing as part of the development has been submitted to and approved in writing by the LPA. It goes on to set out the numbers, type, tenure, location of the affordable housing, the percentage of 15%, which the development meets, timing of construction, arrangements for the transfer of the affordable housing, etc. So it hasn't got any tenure splits as such within there. That's to be agreed at the point when that condition actually gets discharged. So the housing that's proposed within this reserve matters has been agreed in terms of the housing mix of affordable housing, in terms of the size and design of it and the locations, but the tenure mix hasn't yet been agreed, and that condition hasn't yet been discharged.
Right. So does that mean that we can sort of indicate what we'd like to see at this point? Sorry to put you on the spot, but
You can, yes, you can indicate what you'd like to see, but it obviously wouldn't be that it is determined as such, because that condition still needs to be determined.
right. So will it be in accordance with our affordable housing SPD? Because that's what is overriding here, isn't it?
Yeah, we would expect it to be in accordance with the SPD.
Okay. Does that satisfy your question, Councillor Brown?
Yeah, it does. I just want to, yeah, I was just expecting it to be a little bit more firmed up, but obviously appreciate that that's not the case. But it would be good to have some sort of conclusion before the end of tonight as to how that's actually going to be firmed up in relation to the split. Yeah.
So my assumption is there isn't anything preventing us from saying it has to be in accordance with the affordable housing SPD.
It's not a condition that you can put on this particular permission. You can obviously make you can make your wishes
known. Yeah. Okay. So as long as that's acceptable, Councillor Brown.
Yeah, that's
make
fine.
our views known. Okay.
That's
Thank
fine.
you very much. Right. Sarah, you still got your hand raised. Thank you.
I've got my hand raised. I hope not.
Right, we've heard the speakers. Officers, you've responded, and now it's over to you, members. Do you have any questions of Sarah before we start? Councillor Higgins, so your hand is raised.
Yeah, thank you. Sarah, could you just on the site map could you, you went in great length about parking, so I'm fine with that. Could you point out where the public spaces are, I suppose, is what I'm looking for. So where either people can interact or relax, because I couldn't see that from the presentation. It was a bit, maybe I'm just too far away from there. So in terms of like where people can just go out and sit down or read a book, or even just play with a little game of rounders or anything. And I know there is something next door to it, but just on this site.
Yeah, so on this first slide, the land to the east, so where you can see there's those 3 orange arrows just over to the right hand side of your screen, that's Kirby Fields Park. So large open space there. And then it was on one of the later slides, Louise, I think it was almost the sort of last but one, if you can flick to that one, it zooms in on that area there. That's the one. So right where that middle orange arrow was, the developers added in this sort of open space here with the footpath through it to direct people essentially to the Kirby Fields Park there.
Are they the only 2 bits on the?
Pretty much, unless you consider that the attenuation basin drainage green space towards the north of the site could obviously have a multi-function purpose in that regard. And then there's the bit of sort of open space right down at, so that where Louise is just moving the cursor up there, so that open space, which is the drainage area, and then there's obviously the bit of open space ish right towards the front of the site on Kirby Lane at the south, where there's the planting and the landscaping done in there, but there's no struggling to get my words out, sort of a park or anything like that in the middle of the site. The focus of that is where that open space is, where Louise is doing the circling with the cursor at the moment.
And forgive me if I've missed it in the report, because I remember this has been a few times. Is there any contribution to recreation? Because if it's not on here, is there any off-site contribution or anything like that?
Not that I can recall, no.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that. Did you want to put your hand down, Councillor Higgins, if you've finished? Yeah, okay, thank you. Right, well, over to you, members, to debate now. We've had all the questions of officers. Silence. Councillor Faulkner.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Obviously this has been before us a few times now, and it has got a little bit better, but it seems to me that the developer has done pretty much the bare minimum that they needed to do. However, the things that we've been asking to have done aren't actually in our policies. So until they're in our policies, I don't think we can go much further with asking for alterations from the developer. But I want to hear what other people have got to say as well. Okay, thank you.
I saw Councillor Holmes, his hand was raised.
Yeah, thank you. Right, maybe I've missed it in here, but all the roads, they are adopted, are they? Within this site?
I understand that they are, because it's more of a highways design.
Well, I realise that, but there are roads that go across and they're a different colour, and I just didn't know whether, because I think it's absolutely essential. The other thing, I don't know whether we can make this a condition. Every house that has a garage, an internal garage, instead of a parking place, can we ensure that they stay as garages and not turn into other rooms? Because if they do, then we're going to have another problem about where cars are going to be parked. I just feel that it's all very well, and I think it's a good idea that we're breaking up the the car parking, etc. Disappointed that there is not more area for play, etc. I would like to have known the size of the gardens for these bigger houses as well, or any of them really. I don't know how we can, whether Sarah's got that, you know, because people do play, children do play in the gardens, and I would have thought this would have been an opportunity for any developer to have actually made more play space, and I'm sure they could do it if they really wanted to. I think it's very regrettable when it's a big development and we don't really have enough area for children to play, especially knowing what it's been like this knockdown time. And I think we've got to think very long and hard about that. That's all. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Talking about the garages, I think you could, well, if members were minded, they could condition to remove permitted development rights. But I'd like Sarah to come in to answer your question about the size of the gardens if she has that information.
Yeah.
Thank you. No, I don't have access to that information. I don't know whether it's something that Mr. Galley would have to hand if he's still available to come back through at all. But no, I don't have that, I'm afraid. I was just going to add in about you were asking if the roads are all adopted. In the main, they are. So you can see that there's the loops as it kind of moves forward off the main street, but at the south of the site there's some managed lanes, so the ones that occupy those two corners, so the southwest and the southeast. In the middle of the site on the west there's a private drive there, and then there's some other private drives as you go a little bit further up, and particularly up at the top where it meets with the Bellway development on the northern side, there's some private drives across there, but in the main, yes, they are adopted.
I would like to have seen them all adopted, actually, because I think it's all very well when it's small sites, but when it's a big site like this, it only gets to be trouble and problems. So I would like to have seen them all adopted.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chair. Looking at the site, I've got grave concerns about it. I know it's been here a few times, but I'm going to judge it upon the fact that I've been on the committee since May, and I'll judge upon what I feel. I think the design is poor. I think trying to get rid of the tandem parking and put garages in, let's be honest, the garages will end up just being like my own garage at home. It'll end up being filled with equipment, with goods, with household materials, etc. I think the lack of open space, and bear in mind, we've just experienced the things with COVID, and it's probably lucky that it is beside a park, but that shouldn't be an excuse to have poor design. And I think we're just going to basically have one big large car park, and I won't be supporting this recommendation this evening, and that's what I'm basically going to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Higgins, I believe you're next.
Pretty much to what the other speakers have said. I think this is troubling on national policy, and we need to judge things on local and national policies only. I think the national planning policy framework, it's struggling to meet in parts of the design. I don't think it meets the National Design Guide. And then I don't think it's meeting our local plan policy D1. Councillor Faulkner said it, questioned if it met the bare minimum, and the applicant said it was acceptable. Now, that's obviously a judgment, and if it is acceptable, then we need to permit it. And if we don't think it's acceptable, I think we need to refuse it. Councillor Holmes, I thought, spoke excellently when she was on about play space, and it was regrettable. And if you just look at the National Design Guide, M3, well considered parking, I think, and it is to the credit of the applicant that they have made changes. I just don't think enough. The same design guide N1 provide high quality green open spaces with a variety of landscapes and activities, including play. Now, I accept there's a site just next door to it, but you know, equally, it is incumbent on the landowner and the applicant to contribute back to Melton Mowbray as well. P1, create well located, high quality and attractive public spaces. Well, I just don't think it even hits that one. And P3, make sure public spaces support the social interaction. I don't think it's there. So for that reason, Chair, I'm going to propose, and it is with regret, because I like to see myself as very positive on planning, and while we need houses and we need housing delivery, I just, at the third time of asking, I think we've got to make a decision as the applicant asked. I don't think it hits that mark in my view, in my judgment on this. And so against the local plan and the national planning policy, the reserved matters application has not sufficiently demonstrated that it would result in a form of development that would deliver good quality design and be sympathetic to the character of the locality by virtue of its appearance, landscaping, layout and scale. As such, the proposal is considered a conflict with the criteria set out in policies D1 of the Melton Local Plan and design matters as set out in the revised National Planning Policy Framework 2019 and advice set out within the National Design Guide. And I don't propose refusals very lightly, Chair, as you well know.
Thank you. We'll have to go to Councillor Holmes. You have your hand raised.
Yeah,
we've had a proposal, and
yes, I couldn't have put it better myself. I'm quite happy to second that.
Hope you don't expect me to recite all those reasons, because I was trying to make notes, but I think I might call them. Yeah.
I'm really concerned. I am really concerned about it, and I think that, you know, when you've got a big area like that, surely you can make it better. No, surely it can be made better. And I quite agree. I don't like turning something down, but to me, it's not good enough. And so I'd like to second the refusal.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Steadman, you have your hand raised.
Sorry, yes, I was actually going to second the motion by Councillor Higgins, but I'd also like to say, you know, from the first version we had of this, it has actually come a very long way, but just not quite far enough. I mean, the tree lines on the Spine Road, I think, is a vast improvement. I realise that there's nothing that we can do about 3 tandem parking spaces, but at the end of the day, we are looking down the barrel of parking ban on pavements, and I can see that being catastrophic on a site like this. This is the edge of the town, it's the edge of Melton. So although it's an urban development, it really needs to reflect the rural aspect of the site as well. So yes, I agree with what Councillor Higgins said, and I will be supporting that motion.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Faulkner.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, if I recall rightly, when it came to us in the first instance, I made the comment of whatever goes on this site, as a town, we've got to live with it for at least the next 50 years. And, you know, it's borderline, as we've said, as whether it's acceptable or not. And it's unusual that Councillor Higgins and Councillor Holmes agree on something. I'm quite surprised about that one. And as they're both agreeing to refuse it, I think that's a good enough reason for me to go along with it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Posnett.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to say that following our first application tonight, I think we demonstrated how working with local members can actually change a development into something that fits in with the area that they are, fits in with the local community. Although there isn't any adjoining developments, there are some very close by. And I think that perhaps if developers can think that it's worth having a conversation with local ward members. It's worth inviting local ward members to take part in meetings that they're having with planning officers, and then we won't actually finish up in these situations, because all of these issues could have been sorted out quite a while ago. And I can't disagree with what members have been saying earlier either. But I just wanted to make the point about, look at what we've achieved with the first development that local members took part in, and that you as chair, myself as vice chair, also took part in some of those meetings. So I think it's vital that developers do start and think that way, because we do want something that it may be an urban development, but it's built in the middle of the countryside. So I think it is important. And also I think if COVID's, as somebody said, has demonstrated anything to us, it's the need for open spaces. There'll be families with small children living in that development, and there's no recreation facilities for them actually to use and to play with. And if they want recreational facilities, they've got to take them down to the park in Melton. And I just think that's really sad. But they're my comments, and that's what I'd like to stress, really. They get in ward members to take part. Thank you.
Thank you. We now have Councillor Bindloss.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of points, really, and it's just expanding on what Councillor have already said. Agree completely with Councillor Holmes' comments on the garages. There's too many people, and it's a prerogative of people, I know, but too many people change garages into an additional room for one reason or another. And that can lead to a lot of issues as far as putting cars away. And the second point, really, and this is just agreeing with what everybody else has said, but looking at this, and if you look at this plan and consider how busy these little roads are going to be, and they will be busy, there's a lot of houses on these. If you're living on the left side of this estate with young children who want to access a park, they've got to work their way around these roads to get to that park. Exactly. And you know that is just, you can just see a calamity there. So I just wanted to agree with what everybody else has said about this, but that would really seriously concern me if my child was having to go from one side of this estate to the other side of the estate to actually access some kind of park. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Chandler, you have your hand raised.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I totally endorse what Councillor Posnett said. She really has stolen my thunder. As a rural member, I value open space, and there is none on this development. A lot of houses, large houses, small houses, affordable houses, a mix we want. But surely people are entitled to a bit of open space, and as has been said tonight, I think it's been brought home to everyone this year how vital it is for people to have fresh air and open space to walk out in. And I can't see there's anything here to cover that. And we should be providing something for small children. They can go down to the play park. I mean, it's a fair old way from where the site is, but they can go down when they're older, but they certainly can't when they're preschool and pre-secondary school. And I think we should think of the wider age range of children. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Try to put your hand down. Thank you. Yes. To be honest, I do agree with members this evening. On balance, there are a few improvements, but they really haven't gone far enough, and that is very disappointing with the amount of work that officers and some members who actually met them have put into this. It was, to me, it was sort of very grudgingly steps forward, but there's still an awful long way to go. The mention of using Kirby Fields, yes, that's ideal, but there are other developments near to the country park but that didn't stop them introducing lovely green spaces throughout that development, which broke up the mass of brickwork. So it just doesn't cut it for me, to be honest. And as chair, I do find it difficult to refuse, but I have to support refusal on this one. It's not something that I like to do as chair, as I've already mentioned, but I think we have no alternative. And I would encourage the developers to look at this and sort of provide something that they will be proud of and we will be proud of going forward, because once it's built, you can't do anything about it. It's built, and there is a lovely sort of countryside around it. Let's bring the Kirby Fields into the development. It's begging to be brought into that development with more green fingers going through going through this, which wouldn't remove many houses, to be honest. And I just think there's a lot more they could do, but this just doesn't cut it. Even though we've made some improvements, it's just not there yet. Right, so we've had a lot of debate on that one. Thank you very much, members. And we've had a proposal to refuse. Could I ask you, Councillor Higgins, to go through the reasons for refusal again, because I tried to make notes, but you were talking very fast.
Yeah, so basically it's one local policy, it's policy D1 and the NPPF. Do you want me to read it out? Happy to read it out.
Would you like us to read it out, Mr. Worley? And
I think it's wise, so everyone's clear.
I think it'd be good to do. Thank you.
So the reserve matters application has not sufficiently demonstrated that it would result in a form of development that would deliver good quality design and be sympathetic to the character of the locality by virtue of its appearance, landscaping, layout and scale. As such, the proposal is considered to conflict with the criteria set out in policy D1 of the Melton Local Plan and design matters as set out in the revised National Planning Policy Framework 2019 and the advice set out in the National Design Guide.
Thank you for that recap. That's very helpful. Right, we'll now go through the vote, and I'll do it alphabetically as I usually do. Councillor Bindloss, are you for the motion to refuse?
Oh, yes.
Thank you. Councillor Brown?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Chandler?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Faulkner?
For.
Councillor Glancy, I'm for. Councillor Hewson? Okay, hand raised, thank you. Councillor Higgins?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Holmes?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Posnett?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Steadman?
For.
And Councillor Wood?
For.
Thank you very much. The application is refused. Thank you. Item 5, urgent business. I have no urgent business this evening. So I'd just like to thank everybody for this evening. It's a very healthy debate. We've had one wonderful application and one not so good. So thank you very much, everybody, for the time you've taken this evening and for the speakers who have come along as well.
Thank
and
you.
the officers. Okay. Thank you very much, everybody. So Natasha will now close the meeting rather promptly. Okay, thank you.